My stepdad rented out my room while I was at college. Now he and mom are facing prison and want my help to get out of it. I'm a 25-year-old guy, and I've never gotten along with my stepdad, Rick, who's 52 now. Honestly, I don't think there's anyone I dislike more in this world. He married my mom, she's 47, when I was just 15, barely a couple of months into their relationship. It's been a decade since then, and my feelings toward him haven't softened one bit. My parents, mom and dad, he's 50, split up when I was really young, maybe around 4 or 5 years old. In the beginning, my mom had full custody, and dad only got weekend visits. He'd come by to spend Saturdays and Sundays with me. But that changed around the time I turned 7, when they updated the custody arrangement so that I could spend half the month with dad and the other half with mom. Dad's an architect, always busy but successful, while my mom worked as a secretary for most of her life. I grew up closer to her just because we spent more time together. But things started to shift when I was about 16. That's when my dad got offered a great job opportunity at a firm, the catch being he'd have to move out of state. If he accepted it, he wouldn't be around much anymore. By that time, mom had already married Rick, and living with him was just awful. I'd vent to my dad constantly about how miserable it was at home with Rick. My dad knew things were bad and asked me if I'd be willing to move in with him. I turned him down. As much as I hated my situation, I couldn't bring myself to leave my mom behind. Dad almost declined the job for my sake, but I talked him into taking it. It was a big deal for him, and I didn't want to be the reason he missed out. So Dad moved. We kept in touch through video calls and saw each other during holidays, but I missed him more than I let on. Meanwhile, living under the same roof as Rick was hell. He was a bully, plain and simple. He'd go out of his way to put me down any chance he got. What made it worse was that he hadn't acted like that while he was still just dating my mom. Back then, he was a little awkward around me, sure, but he mostly kept his distance. Once they tied the knot, though, he flipped into a completely different person. It was like he couldn't stand having me around and was trying to push me out of their lives. But I wasn't about to leave my mom, so I kept my head low. Sometimes I snapped back when I couldn't take it anymore, but I stayed. What made it all the more unbearable was that Rick wasn't just mean to me, he treated my mom like dirt too. He'd talk down to her, push her around, act like she didn't matter, and she just took it. I begged her more than once to leave him, to see him for who he really was, but she always made excuses. She'd say I didn't understand the full picture, that Rick had his reasons, and I shouldn't judge him so harshly. I never believed a word of it. To me, Rick was exactly as terrible as he seemed. He was also ridiculously jealous of my dad. That part was obvious. He didn't want mom keeping anything from her past marriage, not photos, not gifts, nothing. He even told her to destroy it all. She didn't listen, though. Instead, she stashed everything away in the attic. Rick's insecurities really showed whenever dad came to visit, like for holidays or my birthday, and brought me something expensive. I'd make sure to show it off just to get under Rick's skin. It was petty, sure, but it felt good. He worked as a construction manager and made decent money, but not nearly as much as my dad, and that clearly bothered him. I enjoyed reminding him of that. Back then, I never imagined he'd find a way to use all that resentment against me one day. Anyway, I stuck around for a few more years, mainly for my mom's sake, and then came college, my ticket out. I couldn't wait. College meant freedom. I'd only have to come home for the holidays and wouldn't have to deal with Rick every single day. I was relieved, but part of me worried about what mom would go through without me around. Still, I knew I had to go. College wasn't something I could just skip. I decided I'd come back home every other weekend to check in on mom, though I didn't tell her that part. I wanted it to be a surprise. The day I left for college, my mom was all tears and hugs. Rick, on the other hand, looked like he'd just won the lottery. He was grinning the whole time and even handed me a little cash as a goodbye gift. If I didn't already know how much he hated me, that smile sealed it. Dad was paying for my tuition, so I didn't have to worry financially. I left with a light heart and stuck to my plan. For the first couple of months, I visited home every other weekend, just like I'd intended. But after a while, mom asked me to stop coming back so often. She said it was better if I only came home for the big holidays. What she told me next hit me hard, still stings, even now. She said that Rick would get into these terrible moods whenever I was around, and when he was like that, he'd take it out on her too. But when I wasn't there, he acted like a totally different man, kind, easygoing, even pleasant. Basically, she felt like things were more peaceful without me around. She made it sound like I was the problem. Hearing that crushed me. I spiraled into a pretty low place emotionally, but eventually, I decided I wouldn't go back until Christmas. I didn't even return for Thanksgiving, I just stayed in a hotel near campus. I told my dad about it, and he was furious, but I asked him not to bring it up with my mom. If my being around was causing trouble for her, then I'd just stay away. That's what I told myself. I still kept in contact with her, but our conversations felt forced after that. Cold. Distant. And then, one day, they just stopped. No explanation. Nothing. So when Christmas break rolled around, I didn't have the usual excitement about going home. I wasn't even sure how I felt about seeing my mom again. Part of me hoped she'd be happy to see me walk through that door, but I wasn't holding my breath. But when I showed up at the house that Christmas, the look on my mom's face wasn't joy, it was panic. Before either of us could say a word, some guy I'd never seen before stepped out the front door, thanked my mom for lunch, and walked off. I stood there completely confused. That's when my mom explained that the man was a tenant. Apparently, Rick had decided to rent out the first floor of the house. Now, the thing is, that entire floor had always been mine. My room, my space. So, it hit me right then, Rick had rented out my room. She let me come in and said she could explain everything, but asked me to stay calm and give her a chance. I was already upset, and the moment I stepped into the living room and saw Rick casually drinking on the couch, my mood only got worse. He looked at me with this annoyed expression, like I was the one inconveniencing him. I couldn't hold it in. I asked him straight up what happened to my room. And in the most casual, dismissive way, he said since I didn't live there anymore and was a grown man, there was no reason to keep a whole floor empty for me. So, he rented it out to make some extra cash. I called him an idiot, then asked if he had even once thought about where I was supposed to stay when I came home to visit. That smug smile he gave me in response only made my blood boil. He said, "Well, your dad's loaded, right? I'm sure he'll take care of you. No need to act like this is some big deal." I was so angry I couldn't even form a proper comeback. So I turned to my mom, hoping, praying, she'd back me up. But all she did was lower her head. Not a word. Nothing. And that was it for me. I had so much I wanted to yell at Rick, wanted to demand my room back, but in the end, I realized it wouldn't matter. There was no point. So I grabbed my things and walked out. I thought my mom might run after me. I stood there waiting for a cab, hoping she'd come out. She didn't. But I did hear them arguing inside. I couldn't make out everything they were saying, but at least my mom sounded angry, and for a moment, that gave me some comfort, like maybe she still cared. Still, I made up my mind that day. I was done going back there. I had spent so many years trying to be there for my mom, and if she couldn't value that, well, then it was her loss. That Christmas was the last time I ever saw my mom, or Rick, for that matter. When I got into that cab, I didn't even look back. I felt completely finished with her. After that, I told my dad everything. He said from now on, I could always come stay with him whenever I needed to be home. And that's exactly what I did every holiday. I flew out to visit him. And after I graduated, I moved in with him full-time. He helped me get my foot in the door with my first internship, and later, landed me my first real job. I still live with him to this day, and honestly, he's the only family I have left. I stopped talking to my grandparents around the same time things went south with my mom, though that wasn't hard. We'd never been particularly close. My dad's parents had passed when I was still a toddler, so I never really knew them. Now, it's just me and my dad, and honestly, we're okay with that. There's no sadness about it, we've accepted it. In fact, we've built a good life together. He's not just my father, he's my best friend. I truly couldn't have asked for a better dad. Everything was going fine until just last week, when out of the blue, my mom reached out to me. After nearly 7 years of silence, she messaged me on Facebook, saying she needed to talk. Said it was an emergency and that she really needed my help. She asked me to come visit her, said it was something she couldn't talk about online. I told her I didn't even live in the same city anymore, so it wasn't exactly possible. That's when she said a phone call would be fine and gave me her number. But I replied and told her straight I wasn't interested in whatever she had to say. That should have been the end of it, but she kept texting me over the next few days. I ignored all of it, until eventually she broke and told me the real reason she wanted to talk. Turns out, she and Rick had taken out a massive personal loan, 80 grand, from Rick's boss. They told him it was for my college tuition. And now, after all these years, the boss wanted his money back. But of course, they didn't have it. They were desperate. So now, they wanted me to pretend to be seriously ill or something, hoping it would pull at the guy's heartstrings and stop him from suing them. Apparently, they'd signed paperwork and everything, promised to pay it back, with interest. It was a completely insane idea. Even if I had been close to them, I wouldn't have agreed to something like that. So I told her no, firm and clear. She didn't reply for a few days after that. I figured it was over. But then, she messaged me again, this time, saying she was in my city and needed to see me face to face. That stunned me. I guess she was really desperate, thinking I'd cave if she showed up in person. I told her I wasn't going to meet with her. The whole thing felt sketchy and dangerous, and I didn't want to get pulled into it. I even said that if she was serious about getting out of trouble, she should just start paying the loan back in installments and hope Rick's boss would agree. Then she hit me with something unexpected. She said that even if I didn't want to help with their plan, that was fine. But she just wanted to see me one last time before she left. Said she'd come all this way and couldn't leave without at least meeting me. I knew she was bluffing, probably trying to guilt me into it. But still, part of me wanted to see her. I missed her more than I wanted to admit. So, I agreed. We met for lunch yesterday. For the first few minutes, it was emotional. I hadn't seen my mom in years, and it felt good to hug her again. But that moment didn't last. Within half an hour, she brought up the loan, brought up the plan. And just like that, all my patience vanished. I didn't even respond. I stood up and walked out, without saying another word. As she stood there calling my name, I didn't stop or turn back. I just kept walking, got into my car, and drove straight home. The whole thing left me with a sour taste, and I honestly regretted agreeing to meet her at all. Deep down, I'd known she was bluffing, so that part's on me. But beyond that? I don't think there's anything I need to feel guilty about, and neither does my dad. My mother, though, clearly doesn't feel the same. Late last night, she sent me a long video message. She was clearly drunk, crying her eyes out, and barely able to speak through the slurring and sobbing. Still, the message came through loud and clear. She expected me to help her. She said I'd always been her shield growing up, and that even though she'd made mistakes, she never thought I'd turn my back on her. She said she was disappointed, that instead of being the bigger person, I was getting revenge. According to her, I was letting my pride win when there was so much on the line. It was hard to even understand some of what she was saying because she was crying so hard, but one thing was obvious: she was heartbroken, and she was blaming me. She kept repeating how she'd always counted on me and how I'd proven her wrong. By the end of the video, she was practically sobbing uncontrollably, and I'll admit, it tore me up inside. I felt sick with guilt. As angry as I was, I do love my mom. And seeing her like that, broken and desperate, hit me harder than I expected. I can't bear the thought of her going to jail, and that's a real possibility if she doesn't pay that loan back, or if I don't somehow stall it for her. The truth is, after she married Rick, it's like she became someone else. But before that, she was a good mom, caring, warm, involved. So part of me feels like this is my one shot to repay her for the years she was there for me. Still, I keep asking myself, at what cost? For starters, she hasn't even told me exactly what they used that $80,000 for. I can't get involved without knowing the full story. And even if I did, the plan they're pitching isn't just half-baked, it's downright reckless. Rick's boss isn't some fool. He could see right through the act, and if he does, things could spiral out of control fast. It's dangerous. I want to help her, I really do. But I'm not sure I should sacrifice my integrity and future just to clean up the mess they created. I don't know if that makes me selfish or not. It feels selfish. But my gut and my common sense is telling me to stay away. I don't want to be responsible for my mother going to jail, but I also don't want to be dragged down with her. Update 1. I made the tough decision to block my mom. She can't reach me anymore, and as painful as that was, I feel lighter now that it's done. I told my dad everything about the video, the crying, the manipulation, and he said I made the right call. He pointed out that she knows exactly how much I value her, and she was using that against me, trying to reel me in emotionally. A lot of people online told me I have serious mommy issues. As much as I hate hearing that, they're probably right. Reddit isn't therapy, but maybe therapy is what I need. So I've started looking into getting professional help, because I know this isn't a healthy pattern for me. Out of curiosity, I did some digging into Rick's boss, and I'm so glad I didn't go along with their plan. All it took was scrolling through Rick's social media. He had plenty of photos with co-workers, and it wasn't hard to figure out who the boss was: an older guy, dressed differently, carried himself like he ran the place. I checked out his account, and that's when it all clicked. His daughter had died of cancer just a couple of years ago. That's what Rick and my mom were banking on. They wanted me to pretend to be sick, hoping his past loss would make him too emotional to pursue the loan repayment. Not only was it a horrible plan, it was unbelievably cruel. They were planning to exploit a grieving father's trauma just to buy themselves more time. After I realized that, blocking my mom didn't feel hard at all. I don't know whose twisted idea it was, hers or Rick's, but whoever thought that up is just awful. And the one who agreed to it? Even worse. I finally understood how manipulative and calculating my mom had become. I spent my whole life thinking I needed to protect her. But looking back, I was the one who needed protecting. And she failed me badly. So no, I don't feel guilty anymore. Not after seeing the full picture. They're on their own now. Update 2. Since she couldn't reach me, my mom decided to go through my dad instead. That was a shock, they hadn't spoken in at least 7 years, maybe more. She told him the same story she told me and begged him to convince me to help. But my dad stood his ground. He told her I was an adult, and she couldn't force me to do anything I didn't want to. She tried to guilt trip him too, said he was being unfair, said she was desperate and had everything to lose. She acted like this was somehow our fault. But my dad didn't budge. In fact, he warned her if she kept pushing, he'd go straight to Rick's boss and tell him the truth about what they were plotting. And get this, she wasn't even fazed. She told him to go ahead, said she didn't care. Probably because she knew neither of us would actually stoop that low. Before she hung up, though, she passed on a message for me. She claimed the loan wasn't for anything shady, that they were trying to start a business together. She said she'd been planning to return to work after years of being out of it, and this was supposed to be their shot. But they got scammed, lost everything, and couldn't tell Rick's boss the truth because it would have been a conflict of interest. So they lied, and now they're stuck in a hole they can't climb out of without my help. But I was done. I told my dad to make that crystal clear. I don't respect them, I don't like them, and I definitely don't owe them anything, no matter what she thinks. She isn't my family anymore. She lost that privilege. She needs to stop believing I'm some backup plan. Update 3. So, after months of silence, I finally heard from my mother again. She messaged me from a new number since I'd blocked the old one. She said they were going to try paying the loan back themselves, and they didn't need my help anymore. Not surprisingly, she wasn't nice about it. Her message was laced with bitterness. She thanked me for nothing. Said she never wanted to see me again. And honestly, I was okay with that. Apparently, they sold the house and moved into a smaller apartment. And, somehow, she made it sound like that was my fault. I don't even know how she connected those dots, but at this point, nothing she says surprises me. Bottom line? We're done. She hates me, and I'm not far behind. And for the first time in years, I'm actually okay with that.